so this is super informal. This is a part of a series we've been doing at the church called Getting to Know Epiphany. It's for newcomers and anyone else who really just wants to know more about what we do here. And one of the things that we do here regularly at Epiphany is Evensong. Evensong is one of those words that you either, or things really, that you either know what it is or you don't, right? There's no gray area. Truly. And if someone thinks there's a gray area, they're lying. But, right, like, 'cause some people, even if they don't usually go to church, they know what to, like, if they go to church, they're like, oh, is there communion? Yes, there is communion, right? They know other words. Generally, visitors don't come into churches and go, is there Evensong? So anyway, knowing that that's a little bit of a rare thing, we decided that one of these series would be a pretty quick talk, I'll keep it as brief as I can, about the history of the service and then give you an opportunity to ask questions about the service and why things are the way they are. Does that make sense? Okay, so Evensong is kind of like, does anyone watch Glee? Did anyone watch Glee? You know what a mashup is? It's really a mashup of two different services from what we call the Liturgy of the Hours. Show of hands, who knows what I mean by Liturgy of the Hours? Okay, so the Liturgy of the Hours is a cycle of daily prayer. If you want to talk about Liturgy of the Hours and observing a cycle of daily prayer, you need to go all the way back to Saint Benedict, otherwise known as our friend Benny, not to be confused with Benadryl, which is also my friend. But Saint Benedict is considered to be sort of the father of Western monasticism, right? So Saint Benedict is the one who codified the daily cycle of prayer, the Liturgy of the Hours, and all of the offices. These monks, you know, it was built around the rule of ora et labora. Does that sound familiar to anybody? Work and, right? Work and pray, really. So there was this cycle of prayer, and everything was very structured. Now, the two offices that are most important for Evensong is Compline and Vespers. Vespers being the first service at evening, and then Compline later on. What is interesting, I didn't know this until a little while ago. Vespers, Benedict was the one who moved it earlier into the day, Vespers, because it was celebrated at night, but Vespers, they often have a candle lighting at evening prayer, right? Well, the reason there's a candle lighting at evening prayer back then is there weren't light bulbs, right? Like there was some utility around having Vespers before the sun went down. Otherwise, you weren't going to find the candles to begin with. So Saint Benedict, really interesting guy. Again, patron saint of Western monasticism, also the patron saint of school children, spelunkers, and poisonings, in case you're interested. He's the patron saint of a whole bunch of weird stuff. I suggest you read about him sometimes. Wild guy. So he codifies this, right? And now you have this rhythm of daily prayer. And again, Vespers, Compline. Now, the way these two services are structured is essentially there's some sentences at the beginning, and then there's a reading, and then a canticle, and then some other prayers. But the reading and canticle things are the two things I want you to remember, right? So there's a reading, and then there's a canticle, right? Okay, so at Vespers, the canticle that always followed was the Magnificat. And at Compline, the canticle that always followed the reading was the Nunc Dimittis, right? So that is what I want you to remember about the Liturgy of the Hours. Vespers, Magnificat, Compline, Nunc Dimittis, right? So anyhow, lots of things happen, the Dark Ages happen, countries are invaded, right? Stuff. And we're going to fast forward to Henry VIII, right? Forms the Church of England, things are going on. And the thing is like there's a lot of movement in England at the time, right, to kind of codify English culture, right? So you've got like this country that is trying to define itself through its religion, through the Church of England, and what you have is the Book of Common Prayer. and that comes along. So the thing that I love about the Book of Common Prayer is it's in its title, right? The Book of Common Prayer, it's for the commoner, for the common people. It is common to all, owned by all. And as sad as this is, that was a relatively new concept, right? So a big focus of the Book of Common Prayer was to make the prayer of the church more accessible, right? Because think about it. Before that, in Latin, services were held in the cathedral in Latin. You were likely trying to sell your cow in the nave and not really actually paying attention to the mass going on up there. And also, the daily life of somebody who was either not clergy or in a religious vocation or royalty was probably pretty hard, right? Think about all of the things that they would have had to do. Very busy day, praying the daily office, right? Like stopping every few hours to stop and pray the daily office. That's not a thing. I don't. Do you have time? Right? They really didn't. So what Cranmer wanted to do with the Book of Common Prayer was to make the liturgy of the hours accessible to the average person and get them participating in this. So there was Matins, which was a mashup of morning prayer, but Evensong was essentially a condensed version of the evening offices that Saint Benedict established centuries earlier. And so in order to mash up Vespers and Compline, what did he do? He added a reading. And after the first reading, there is a Magnificat, and after the second reading, there is a Nunc Dimittis, right? So, and that is very intentional, right? Because you have the Magnificat generally will always follow a reading from the Old Testament, right? So generally in the church, we have in services of the Word, we have a pattern of word and then people's response, right? So on Sunday mornings, right, there's usually a reading and then a psalm, which is the people's response, or reading and then a hymn, which is the people's response. But when there's a reading, we always respond to it, right? So at Evensong, the Magnificat, the Song of Mary, my soul doth magnify the Lord, upon being told that she's to bear the Son of God. That's God's response to the Old Testament, right? All of the Old Testament is leading up to that moment, and that's why the Magnificat follows an Old Testament reading generally, right? Same thing, the Nunc Dimittis generally follows a New Testament reading, because think about the text, like, Lord, I've now seen thy salvation, and I can go in peace, right? That's a great response to the New Testament. So that's also by design. The rest of the service, the prayers, I don't really want to focus too much on that, though I can answer questions on it. We're sort of refined through the next several decades after the advent of the Book of Common Prayer with various revisions. Prayers for the royal family were taken in and out. At the time there was a sort of a royalist culture that needed to be instilled, right, as they were kind of going from being a Catholic country to an Anglican country. So you see in these sort of meanderings of the Evensong service some sort of funny cultural wars going on too. But fast forward even a couple hundred years more, Choral Evensong is now, it's unique to the Anglican Communion, though it is also done in churches of other denominations because people like it. It is celebrated every day in the world, every single day, somewhere in the world. In a lot of English cathedrals, it is 7 days a week, all year round. One of the coolest things, a couple years ago, we took the choir on pilgrimage to England, and it's a really, really cool thing because not much has changed about Evensong. We do a little, like the Episcopal Church has put its stamp on it by adding a thing here or there, but the words, O Lord, open thou our lips, right? And those words have not changed for hundreds and hundreds of years. So it's a really wild thing to go into these English cathedrals and realize that, man, could you, think about the number of people that have done this, right? And what you're stepping into. It's wild, like, like you're sitting in the choir stalls at St. Paul's or Durham or something like that, and then you're looking at how, like, these beautiful wood carvings were clearly defaced by some bored chorister maybe 300 years ago. Right? No, literally. I mean, it's very cool to realize that you're sitting there. And Durham, actually, what the choir was saying is that people are singing Evensong in these stalls every day for hundreds of years, and you would sit in the choir stalls, and when you put your feet onto the floor to stand up, you'd realize that there were imprints on the stone floor of these seats from hundreds and hundreds of years of people standing up and sitting down during the daily office in these cathedrals. So you'll hear churches that do Evensong call it a river of prayer or an ongoing conversation, and it really is. It's very easy to go to Evensong every day of the week in England. Not so much in the U.S. We at Epiphany are one of a handful of churches that does it every Sunday year-round across the country. Maybe the circle gets a bit larger when you say every Sunday from September through May. But it's something that we came to love here because and it happened organically here. I should say that too. When the pandemic happened, we could only sing in quartets for a while, and we needed a way to keep busy, so we started singing Evensong on YouTube several days a week. And honestly, having Evensong 4 days a week, or however many times we were doing it during the pandemic, kept me from losing my mind. But as we came out of the pandemic, I think we started to realize that this had become a part of our cycle of prayer in this parish and something that we valued. So we've committed to keep doing it at least once a week. Evensong is usually has an anthem as well. I should say that. Tonight's service was slightly different. Did anyone notice? Right. So usually there's an anthem. During the summer, well, the full choir is gone. We do what we can with who's ever around, and today seemed to be a pretty great day for some unison chant and maybe some organ music. So, though they did a great job. But it's generally, when you come in, there's a lot more like soprano, alto, tenor, bass, SATB choral music, pretty reliably. Today's sort of the odd thing out. Does anyone have questions about Evensong? Yes. Oh. I can also repeat them.
Just hold it close.
Because Evensong is like a thing that, like, we do a lot of things in the church that are,
what year was Benedict?
Oh gosh, 380, 4. I should know that. My guess is end of the 300s.
And maybe you said this, but I might have missed it. But the Catholic Church, they don't do Evensong?
The Catholic Church still does Vespers, and they have Compline as well. Evensong was unique to the Anglican Church after the Church of England was formed by Henry VIII.
Okay, so in the 16th century. The
Catholics have Vespers, and were you to compare a Vespers service, in fact, St. James sings Vespers every week. Were you to compare Vespers to Evensong, a bulletin side by side, you'd notice some striking similarities. There is, because at Vespers there is always a Magnificat. Ooh, yeah. My little building of nerds.
Can I ask one more question? The Common Prayer, at that time when it came out, were the common people, were they literate at that point? Like how? I'm just wondering, like it was.
Yes and no. I'm sorry?
Can you repeat the question? It wasn't
the question was Book of Common Prayer, and it was for the common people. Were they literate? Probably yes and no. What would be a new thing was that it was suddenly being spoken in a language that people spoke. right? Most people did not understand or speak Latin at the time. And frankly, the church being for the commoner, not only in terms of language, but for culturally, was a relatively new thing, right? Like, so for centuries before that, getting your kid, like let's say you were a peasant with a child, like somehow getting your kid to be a priest or getting them into the religious life may be the best thing you could do for your kid, right? Why? Because they'd have shelter, food, stability, right? Without that, life was hard. You know, if you were a male, you probably died of hard labor in your 30s, and if you were female, you probably died in childbirth, right? So you've got all these men walking around with a mother. No wonder Marian devotion sprung up during this age, but that is a whole nother topic.
If you hold the microphone closer, it works better.
Okie dokie. Okay, just a question. Why did you do the Magnificat all stretched out and in Latin, and why did you do the Nunc Dimittis in English?
I'll answer the second question first. The reason we did the Nunc Dimittis in English is because that's what we had in the filing cabinet. That's true. That's what was in the filing cabinet. The one in Latin is, what that was tonight, generally the entire Magnificat would be much shorter at Evensong, and it would be sung by the choir exclusively. What that was tonight is called an alternatum practice, where the choir and the organ are alternating the verses. So the choir sings a verse, then the organ sings a verse. So like the choir sang in Latin, "My soul doth magnify the Lord, and my spirit rejoices in God my Savior." And then the organ sang, "For he hath regarded," blah, blah, blah. And then the choir picked up after that. Does that make sense? So the choir actually did not sing the words of half the Magnificat. It was taken on by the organ. That was a French classic setting. The people in French Baroque music is wild stuff, right? But I mean, you know, the whole court of Louis XIV, wild place. Yeah. I mean, just we could sing the Magnificat in Russian if we wanted to, right? Like, I mean, anything. Like.
So, Zach, just a question. Is Evensong, in a sense, gaining traction in the Episcopal Church? Are you getting more people? And I don't mean just Epiphany, but across the country, is this attracting new people to saying, yes, this makes sense, we need this kind of a service?
Yes, actually, that is happening. And that's happening in two ways. First, I'll speak generally. That I think there is a trend in the larger church around services that are more contemplative and that leave room for just kind of meditation, sitting there and letting it wash over you, right? Evensong, you could do that at Evensong. You can kind of make Evensong what you want for yourself, right? Like, you can actively pray every word that the choir is singing, or you can sit there and relax. But I think the church is seeing a lot of enthusiasm for services that allow people to do that, and services where it can sort of meet anyone where they are, right? Like, in order to participate at Evensong, you don't have to know about, right, at like what's happening. You can just sit there, right? Communion, or a Eucharist service, can be a little bit more of a hurdle, right? Like, we grew up Roman Catholic, and when my parents became Episcopalian when I was in high school, and the first Sunday that we were handed like a book and a prayer book and a hymnal and a leaflet and all this sitting, like, my mother turned to us and said, "I don't know that I have the dexterity for this." But it is more accessible. Now, Evensong itself, I do know of many parishes that are starting to adopt it more frequently. I can think of, off the top of my head, St. John's Tulsa, the cathedral in Little Rock, places that were not doing weekly Evensong before that are now doing that. There are more cities in the U.S. where you can attend Evensong every Sunday than there were 10 years ago. Some Sundays, like I was in Philadelphia before this, you could maybe go to Evensong every week in Philly, maybe. Someone was probably doing it somewhere, but you couldn't actually count on that.
Hey, Zach. Something I've noticed here at Epiphany is that it seems that, typically the choir will sing the Magnificat and the Nunc Dimittis by the same composer.
Yes.
And is that something that is customary at Epiphany or more broadly for the Episcopal Church?
That's customary more broadly. Not required. I mean, you could do whatever you wanted, but well, not whatever you wanted, but there's nothing to say you couldn't sing a setting from one and then the note from the other, but generally it's from the same setting. You do want the service to feel like a cohesive whole, right? And the thing that I love about Evensong is that the Magnificat, like as many ways as you can think of a composer to render those texts, are like, it's infinite, right? Like, so you can come every week and there's a setting you don't know, and it's not just, yes, it's the same words being sung over and over, but when they're sung differently over and over and over and over again, I think there's that's like spiritual practice gold, right? Like that is an opportunity to really, really let whatever setting is being sung call your attention to the text in an entirely different way, right? Like usually sometimes, like when it gets to the text, like he has cast down the mighty from their thrones or whatever, it's usually big, whatever. Every now and then you encounter a setting that does something really unexpected like that, and you just kind of take a step back. And you'd be surprised at how you might sort of start to remember which are which. Kelly Martin never came to Evensong before, and then a couple years ago I walked up after her and she goes, I just love Brewer and D. Huh? Brewer in D, by the way, would be the Magnificat and Nunc Dimittis in D major by Herbert Brewer. Anyway. Oh, sorry. Clyde. Oh, wait, sorry.
Okay.
Oh.
I'll go. I'll be quick. Many of us travel during the summertime and at other times during the year. Is there a directory or any way we can find out if there's Evensong in the area we're going to be in for a while?
I'm not sure, actually. I mean, there is ChatGPT, true. There is Choral Evensong something as a website, though it's not as maintained as it should be. The best way would probably be Google. Or if you're going to travel and you want to know if you can find Evensong, you can always email me. Actually, yeah, copy Laura, though. I don't know why any of you are laughing. Shame. But yeah, no, I'm always, truly, if you ever can't find the answer to that question, please ask, because I will find out for you.
Yes, you mentioned that the Episcopal version of Evensong may be a little bit different from the original Anglican version. Is there anything that is distinctive or stylistic about the way that Evensong is performed here that might be different from what we'd see or hear elsewhere?
There could be. We are pretty, during the summer, we shorten things a little bit. Like it's called, has anyone ever heard the words Phos Hilaron? It's an evening hymn. That's one thing that was not original to Evensong, but was something that was added to Evensong by the 1979 prayer book of the American Episcopal Church. We do that here. And there are some purists who say, oh, that's not but we are an American church. like this is, we are an Episcopal church. But other than that, we actually don't follow the Rite One Evensong out of the prayer book. We pretty faithfully follow the 1662 version of Evensong week in and week out. You might go to other places that might follow a different reiteration of it that's earlier, or you might see a more current one, but we try and stick tonight to the 1662. Which, by the way, a word about old language, those psalms don't necessarily have to be in old language. The other thing that we don't do much of here is call the psalms down. Sometimes we will. But have you ever come to Evensong and the psalm is being sung and you're reading along the text and you're thinking, well, that's not very nice. Have you ever had that thought? Right, like psalms about dashing babies' heads against rocks and, oh Lord, please rise up and murder the wicked, gnash their teeth, and right? And that seems like something that we shouldn't be praying for, generally. And it's not meant as a prayer for God to actually do that, right? But the reason we don't take that text out is because the book of Psalms is meant to encompass the entirety of human emotion and the entirety of our experiences, right? Like, because we believe that we live our whole life and everything we do within the reality of God and the kingdom of God. That means our nice thoughts and our not so nice thoughts, because we all have them, happen within that kingdom of God, right? And so, like, the book of Psalms is really an acknowledgement that, like, yeah, sometimes we feel this way. And we're just being human by singing that text. We're not actually wishing death on people. It's something that I wish I got to say more before the start of Evensong, especially when there is a weird psalm that evening.
Zach, I'm curious, how did you select which settings we did in England?
Oh. I don't know. I think there was a bingo card involved. No. So the settings that the choir sang in England, I had little boxes I wanted to check. So, for example, Herbert Howells is a composer that is important to Anglican church music. So I wanted the choir to have the experience of singing a Howells setting of the Mag and Nunc in a big English cathedral. There were things that I really wanted the choir to experience so that when we came back, we as a choir had that experience and we could translate it to our work here. Picking music here, I do love doing Evensong every week. I sometimes forget how grateful I really should be that we get to do Evensong every week here, because we get to go through so much cool repertoire. It is so fun. It is just so fun. But generally, I don't know that there's a method to what's picked. Usually I'll pick the anthem first to go with the readings of the day, and then once I know what the anthem is, I think, this Mag and Nunc, that'll go well with that anthem, and I guess those responses go with it. We should do Jessica French more often.
Final question?
So anyway, thank you. If you ever have questions about Evensong, especially Evensong, email Laura. No, but we're always around. Like, right, it is a particular thing that we do here. And it's a thing that is different from a lot of other churches. So do ask if you're wondering about something. And also invite folks, right? I really believe that services like this, if there were more Evensong, it can't get worse, right? Like, more Evensong in the world will not make things worse. It can only make it better. And it's amazing. Every week I walk into Evensong. Even the first year we did Evensong on Easter Day, because if we say we're going to do it every Sunday, that's every Sunday. Easter is Sunday. The first year we did Evensong on Easter Day, I thought, like, oh my gosh, after Holy Week. But you know what? The first year we did it, I got into the service and I just kind of like, It's now my favorite part of Holy Week, actually. But it really is such a nice way to end your weekend, and please share it with folks, right? Like, we've grown average attendance from about 10 in the pews to roughly 100 in the pews each week. I'd love to grow it to 200. No more than that, though, because then all these people will suck up my acoustic.
Actually, you can hear Evensong.
Oh.